Today, I want to tell you an incredible story. It's about a language that went from being condemned to becoming a country's single greatest asset in a time of war. It's a story that's all about identity, poetry, and the hidden power in the words we speak every day. So let's get into it.
Okay, so right at the heart of this whole thing is a paradox that is just stunning. On one side, you have this official U.S. government policy summed up in the absolutely brutal phrase, kill the Indian, save the man. I mean, the goal was explicit, wipe out native languages and cultures. But then, on the other side, you have the result. During World War II, that very same language they tried to destroy, well, it became their most valuable, unbreakable secret weapon.
So, how on earth does that happen? Right? How does something a government actively tries to erase become the key to its own survival? Let's dive into that. We're going to uncover the incredible journey of how this rejected language was reclaimed and turned into one of the most powerful weapons in history. And what's so wild is just how fast this all happened. For decades, if you were a Navajo child in a government-run boarding school, speaking your own language could get you punished, sometimes severely. It was treated as worthless. Then, almost overnight, the same government was desperately searching for fluent speakers. It just goes to show you how quickly something people see as a weakness can become an absolutely vital strength. This whole process, it has a name. It's called weaponization. Fundamentally, language is about connection. It's for sharing ideas and building a community. But in the chaos of war, the Navajo code talkers flipped that completely on its head. Their language became a tool of exclusion, a way to lock messages up so that only people inside their cultural circle could understand. It was the perfect shield against the enemy. So, what made it unbreakable? Why couldn't the most brilliant minds and the most advanced machines in the world crack it? Well, the answer is actually kind of beautiful. It wasn't about math, it was about poetry. Let's break down why a poem was the perfect form of encryption. Okay, so first, you've got to understand the difference between a cipher and a code. A cipher, that's mathematical. It just swaps one letter for another. Like A becomes Z. It's rigid, and sooner or later, a machine can figure out the pattern. But a code is totally different. It replaces entire words with concepts. It's linguistic, it's fluid, and it's based on a shared meaning that you can't just calculate. And the real engine of the Navajo code, this is the secret sauce, was metaphor. They used figures of speech to describe the machinery of modern war, but they did it by drawing on ideas and images from their own world. It adds this layer of abstraction that a purely logical mind or a machine just can't get through. And check this out. This is where it gets really cool. Look at the word submarine. They didn't just pick a random Navajo word for it. They called it beslo, which literally means iron fish, or a dive bomber with its swooping attack. That became genie, a chicken hawk. A torpedo plane was a swallow. You can almost see the image in your head, right? They were describing the spirit of the thing, not just giving it a label. It's pure poetry in action. So when you boil it all down, it comes to this. The Axis powers had incredible machines designed to break mathematical ciphers, but they had absolutely nothing that could break a poem. There was no way to decipher a system that's based on cultural perspective and poetic association. It was, for all intents and purposes, the perfect code. And this is where we get to the real heart of the story, because this isn't just about a clever military tactic. The story of the code talkers reveals a deep truth about the value of culture itself, and how something seen as a weakness can actually be a strategic superpower. So when you really step back and look at it, what's the central takeaway from their legacy? It's a question that really challenges our whole idea of what it means to fit in. The answer is so simple, but it's also incredibly profound. Your unique cultural heritage, the language, the stories, the way you see the world, it is not a liability. It's not something to be smoothed over for the sake of conforming. It's a strategic asset. The code talkers proved that a different perspective isn't just valuable. In the right situation, it can be the single most powerful tool you have. And get this, it wasn't just their language, it was their whole oral culture. In a society like ours that writes everything down, we kind of forget that memory is a muscle. It can be trained. The code was never written down in battle. It existed only in the minds of these men. And think about that. What isn't written down cannot be captured, it can't be stolen, and it can't be deciphered. Their oral tradition was a security feature, not a bug. This leads us to another critical lesson from this story, one that feels a little counterintuitive at first. It's about the power of not speaking, about using silence as a shield. For generations, many indigenous communities learned the hard way that when they shared their culture openly, it could be misunderstood, misrepresented, or just flat out stolen. So sometimes silence isn't about an absence of knowledge. It's an active, strategic choice to protect something sacred and valuable from a world that might not respect it. And the Code Talkers embodied this completely. Their work was classified for decades after the war was over. They went home and they didn't speak a word of it to anyone. Not their wives, not their children, nobody. That silence was this incredible act of integrity and duty. They were protecting a national secret, sure, but they were also living out this deep cultural principle of protection through secrecy. So let's bring this into our world, because this is so much more than a history lesson. The way the Navajo language worked as a code is this fascinating mirror for how all of us use language to build our own little communities and identities every single day. I mean, just think about it for a second. The slang you only use with your best friends, the technical jargon you use at work that sounds like total gibberish to an outsider, the dialect from where you grew up. Isn't that its own kind of code? It signals who you are, where you come from, and maybe most importantly, who's in your circle. This process is universal, and it's happening all the time all around us. A group develops its own unique way of speaking. That shared language makes the bonds between them stronger, creating this real sense of belonging. And, just by its very nature, it creates a boundary. If you get the references, you're in. If you don't, you're out. It's a totally human process, but it has a sharp edge, right? Just like the Navajo Code did. It creates belonging by, at the same time, creating exclusion. And then that leaves us with this one final, really big question. The story of the Code Talkers proves that language is never just words. It's a shield to protect your community, a weapon to exclude others, and a flag to signal who you are. So, who gets to decide what it all means? Who owns it? The people who speak it? The government? History books? It's a question about power, survival, and identity that is every bit as real today as it was on the battlefields of World War II.